Okay, today we're going to be taking a quick look at the Blazar Mantis lenses. Now this is going to be more of an overview rather than a full review because we've just got these lenses. And really what we're trying to do here is compare these new 1.33x lenses from Blazar with the older 1.5x lenses and even the Greatjoy 1.8x lenses to see which ones are best. Now, unfortunately, we would have loved to look at the Katos as well, but we do not own those, and we did have to buy these with our own money, so some concessions had to be made. But with that said, we do have some opinions that we did think were worth sharing, so let's get into it. What we have seen with the Blazar lenses is that this is a company that is continuously bringing anamorphic lenses to the masses. Each lens set has been better than the last for the most part, and we have actually found that the Blazar lenses have been by far the most requested piece of equipment that we have when we're going out on set or when other cinematographers are asking us for equipment to rent. Now, before we start, I also want to mention that we are currently shooting on the Mantis 50mm at t2.8, and we're filming on a Lumix S1R2 in its 17:9 4K mode. Do keep in mind for this video that we have shimmed all of these lenses, including the Greatjoys, to make sure that all of them are comparable. Something else to keep in mind is that these do have rather large rear protruding elements, so they're probably not going to work on some speed boosters, or in fact most speed boosters. Now, we have done some testing. These lenses do all fit on the Mofage with the VND in. I will note though that the 75mm, you cannot remove the variable ND filter once the lens is on the camera. You have to attach it or detach it. There isn't enough clearance for the filter to come out with the lens on the camera, but it doesn't interfere with using it. You can adjust the variable ND, which is good news. Okay, now let's have a look at a quick comparison. As you can see, all of these lenses are fairly sharp. They're sharp at T2, and at T2.8, they're almost perfect. We've shot these comparisons at 2.8 because the Greatjoys are T2.9, so we thought this was a really good middle ground to start with. The Mantis 75mm is quite a lot warmer than the other two lenses. That was also the case on the Greatjoys, where the 85 was a bit warmer than the others. Now, when we look at the Mantis lenses, we can see they're very sharp, they've got good contrast, they don't have heaps of distortion. Most importantly, when you compare them to the Remus lenses, they are a lot sharper. Now, we don't have like-for-like copies of the Remus lenses, unfortunately. This is the set that we have access to at the moment. But what we can see is across the board, the Mantis lenses are performing better in our opinions, and they look more anamorphic when it comes to your backgrounds. Now, it is still worth noting that I adore the 35mm Remus lens, even though that is a super 35mm lens. But with the exception of that one particular lens, I think the Mantis lenses completely blow the Remuses out of the water. One thing the Remus lenses do have going for them is that the colors all seem to match a little bit nicer than the Mantis or the Greatjoy set. Shooting 16:9 on the Greatjoys, we see that the look is also very similar at T2.8, but obviously if you do have access to an open gate camera, you are going to be able to get closer on the Greatjoys, meaning that your backgrounds are going to be a little bit blurrier potentially. At the same time, you can also open up to T2 on the Mantis lenses, and so things should actually be fairly similar. Although I will say at T2, although they stay pretty sharp, these Mantis lenses become a little bit bloomier than the Greatjoy lenses do at their widest open. Most impressively though, I think that it's pretty obvious that the bokeh on the Mantis lenses looks extremely similar to the bokeh on the Greatjoys. It is a 1.8x or a 2x look coming out of a 1.33x lens, which is exactly what we were hoping to see. Now, when it comes to flaring, they've got an interesting flare in that they're mostly amber with a bit of blue on the sides. We find them quite attractive. We like the flares here. They'll probably be pretty hot or cold. Not everyone's going to like them, but we do. When it comes to the Remus lenses, the 35mm flares beautifully. The other ones probably look a little blobby and streaky. We would really like to see budget anamorphic lens manufacturers moving away from that streak look, because honestly, it kind of looks a bit like a streak filter in the back of a lens that's been Anamorphic modded. And lastly, when we look at the Greatjoys, we see the least flaring here and also not very consistent flaring, which is a little bit disappointing, but it is something worth noting. We don't think that they flare badly, just that they don't all flare the same. We also see in terms of distortion, the Mantis and the Greatjoy lenses are fairly well controlled. The Mantises have very slight barrel distortion, whereas the Greatjoys are more pincushion. And then the Remuses are quite aggressive, which, to be fair, we think is awesome. We don't think it's bad, but it is definitely worth noting that the Mantis lenses are better controlled, which is probably going to be quite exciting for a lot of people. Okay, so who are these lenses for? Look, if you haven't bought any of these lenses yet, these are a great option. I think hands down, these are the ones that I would reach for first, especially if you're shooting on 16:9 cameras, but we'll get back to that. If you already have the Remus lenses, I think it's going to come down to whether or not you want that funkier look on the Remus lenses, or if you want something a bit more controlled and a lot sharper. Now, when the Remus lenses came out, we were very positive about them in our original coverage. The only thing that's changed, though, is that there are more options on the market now, and so it probably makes picking between them a little bit more difficult. I'd say, for me, I'd pick the Mantises. Now, if you are looking at these versus the older Greatjoys, look, I think if you're shooting on 16:9, these are an obvious choice. If you are shooting on open gate and you want that larger format look, I do actually still think that the Greatjoys have a slightly higher end look in some regards. Now, they're not perfect. Obviously, the 50mm doesn't have a consistent squeeze ratio. And as we mentioned before, the flaring is different on each lens. So not a perfect set. But I do still think that they have an optical quality that just makes me smile. Lastly, the Katos. Look, we haven't personally used the Katos. The reason for that is simple. We have to buy some of these lenses if we want to look at them, unless a brand decides to send them to us for a video. When it came to the Katos, we were very close. We were thinking about picking them up. I've wanted a 2x anamorphic lens set for a long time now. The reason why we ended up not going with those, though, is that we felt that the looks from lens to lens to lens were just a little bit too inconsistent. And so we felt it would be a little bit of a risk in the more commercial and corporate style work that we're doing. With that said, they still have the strongest and most aggressive look, and if you are chasing that, they exist. You know, look, this is anamorphic shooting. There are a lot of opinions when it comes to what is and isn't acceptable or favorable with an anamorphic lens. But as far as we're concerned here, these are probably the best option right now in the budget space for anamorphic lenses. And I've got to be honest, I would go as far as to say that it's going to take quite a lot of innovation to take me away from these to another budget set at this point. But anyways, look, that just about does it here for us today. We'll leave links down in the description to where you can find these lenses. If you like the content, consider giving us a like and a subscribe, and leave a comment down below if you've got questions. We'll try and get back to you. And yeah, we'll see you next time.
Anamorphic dreams, they steal my cash. Every upgrade burns my stash. Blazar's glow, it's a fiery flash, making me broke with every smash.